Hello, hello. We'll give everybody a few minutes to join. I feel like I've got like the big headphones on today. Vicky, yours are a little bit less like prominent,
it's because
maybe.
I
It's
feel like they're
blending
blending
in.
into the background. That's what it is. But
Yeah.
it's a proper headset, that's for sure.
Awesome. Cool. As people are joining, feel free to let us know where you're joining from. Or give us a little thumbs up emoji that you're in the restream. Give everybody about another minute and we'll get started with today's show. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? We have a packed agenda today on today's episode of Christina's Compliance Corner. So we have two very, very special guests, Vicky, Pham, and David Haviley, who are two auditors on the LICA team. I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and we can kind of start talking about, what we're going to be talking about today, which is going to be the past, present, and future of SOC 2 auditing. So they have a lot of very, very good insight to share with us. They've both come from a healthy background of the auditing world, and definitely some good friends of mine, as I can relate to them from my world in IT auditing in the past as well. So we'll give them both an opportunity to introduce themselves. Vicky, if you want to go ahead and get started first.
Yeah, so my name is Vicky. I'm currently an associate in the InfoSec assurance team. I previously was an IT risk consultant with experience in numerous frameworks. I worked previously with clients such as like federal regulatory agencies to startups, from everything from audit to implementation. I've definitely supported the client at like various stages of the journey. Currently, I am also the associate director of budget at my DC ISOCA chapter.
Love that. I would love. Can you tell, just for anybody in the crowd, what ISOCA is?
So ISOCA is the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. They're one of the professional organizations associated with IT audit and IT governance.
So they tell us what we need to do, essentially. They're running the
Yeah.
show. Awesome. Thanks for your intro. Dave?
Awesome. Yeah, my name is David Haviley. I'm a senior manager within the InfoSec assurance team at LICA. Prior to joining LICA about a year ago, I worked within the Big Four for about 10 years of my career. Within that space, I really focused heavily within their third-party attestation reporting divisions, I'll call it. So specifically focusing and specializing within SOC 1, SOC 2 reporting, agreed upon procedures, and also dabbled a bit within the risk management space and helping customers or clients and companies adopt various IT governance strategies and standards like COVID.
Nice. Sounds like you both have some pretty good experience. So, and I can introduce myself to anybody that is new. I'm Cristina. I am obviously Cristina of Christina's Compliance Corner. I previously was an IT auditor myself in the IT risk division as well, in kind of like the Big Four as well. And now have since transitioned to LICA to be on the compliance architect team and now a little bit more on the thought leadership side. So very, very excited to have you both. And we'll go ahead and get started. So The meat of today's conversation is going to be about the past, present, and future of the SOC 2 audit world. So, we have a ton of customers that come to Leica, prospects, things like that, who are approaching audit for the very first time. But, I think, especially as I sat in my IT auditing role in the past, I definitely had a lot of moments where I was like, there's gotta be a better way to do this. So, I think it'll be interesting for us to take a moment to reflect on the past and how things were kind of done, where they are right now, and then talk about the future, since it is definitely a changing landscape. So we can go ahead and get started. Let's talk a little bit about the past, some of the historical components of IT auditing and SOC 2 in general. So we can go ahead and get started with that. So going to prompt you, Dave. What was your experience, and what are some of the continuous non-negotiables that you've seen, both in your past life as well as in your future?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's something that a lot of folks typically think about. I think from a general standard perspective related to SOC reporting, the standard itself, while it's maybe kind of changed hands in terms of the terminology that's used there, it hasn't significantly changed, meaning the expectations of what is being delivered on and how that's being delivered or exemplified has not significantly changed for quite some time. I'll say from a non-negotiable standpoint, though, there sometimes is maybe a bit of a misconception that some things change, but with regards to providing evidence, I'll say, or having an auditor assess the design of a control, meaning how have you as an organization implemented something to say, hey, ideally, this is how we are going to operate, or this is what should happen in theory if things go well, right? That assessment has not changed, right? We're always going to need to assess the design of a control. Likewise, as part of an audit, depending upon the audit that you're engaging in, we'd be assessing as well the operating effectiveness of the control, meaning how have you demonstrated, or how can you demonstrate that control is consistently executed effectively throughout a period of time. So that evidence and the assessment component really has not significantly changed. The mechanisms by which that is kind of demonstrated has definitely changed, in the sense that evidence back in the day, right, could have been provided kind of in a hard copy format, right? You might be getting audited, and you might provide your auditors just hard copies of documents and files and things of that nature. And obviously,
I was just going to say, file cabinets, right.
Checking. And that's what it used to be when I started my career. That's honestly that's how it used to be, and that's significantly changed. Everything's becoming much more electronic, obviously. And then I'm sure we'll probably, if we're talking about the present state of audits and the future state of audits, it's moving progressively more and more towards the automation components of electronic collection, testing, and things of that nature.
Definitely kind of the ever-changing landscape of technology in general. I think it became a requirement to kind of keep up. Maybe just a question for you as a follow-up to that is, have you seen, for example, the type of clientele that has changed, or the type of customers or those who are pursuing SOC 2? Do you think that has changed since the past and maybe become more applicable to a wider audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's grown because of the visibility and the understanding around the standard and the meaningfulness of demonstrating to customers that, hey, I do have controls in place and I'm protecting your data, right? I think we most commonly see that reflected within just the news, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, every other month, it seems like there's another data breach, or there's some issue going on at organizations, and people want comfort. They want the transparency that their information is being protected. And SOC reporting, or SOC 2 reports, provide some level of assurance and transparency of how that information is being protected. So I think naturally, given the issues within the cybersecurity landscape, visibility and transparency through the news regarding what's going on, there's been a very heightened demand associated with SOC reporting. especially with over the past few years, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that has certainly carried us into the present state of the recognition, the household name of, what a SOC 2 even is and who needs to get a SOC 2 in order to continue to run business as usual. So definitely appreciate that insight. And it leads us perfectly into Vicky. I kind of want to ask you a little bit about, where you kind of are seeing the future or the present of SOC 2. What are you seeing in your day to day, whether it be necessarily like what you're doing at Leica or what you kind of had seen in your previous role. Just hear a little bit more about your insight there.
Yeah, I think Dave spoke a little bit about this with like the automation that has slowly trickled its way into audit. And I think like one of the components I've definitely seen is just the automation of like evidence collection,
Yeah.
creating these like applications that really integrate with the customer environments and all the softwares that our customers use, and being able to gain that data like real time is really important. But I also think some of those non-negotiables that we talked about before, with the audit process, right? For example, just doing follow-ups in general,
Yeah.
issuing PBC lists, right? So like
Yeah.
issuing those evidence requests. There's a lot of document organization that has always been a struggle for both
Yeah.
sides, for sure. Just trying to piece everything together, and also just trying to piece together all those follow-ups. There's a lot of he said, she said, trying to keep track of notes, trying to keep track of like
Yeah.
tons of PVC lists, a shared Excel sheet that keeps accidentally getting edited in different areas, right?
Right.
We're looking always for like that transparency within that data integrity, that I'm seeing a lot these days. I think it's really important to like maintain that clear line of communication and maintain that transparency within the audit process, because it definitely reduces everyone's level of effort ultimately.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's one of the big misconceptions that now that technology has entered the chat when it comes to SOC 2, that technology is suddenly going to do everything for us and that there isn't going to be any type of manual work, organization, and general like basic communication skills. Like there is still that kind of like underlying foundation of you gotta have your shit together a little bit at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And that's, I think that's still that was true in the past, that's true in the present, that's true in the future. I don't think that's changing.
Right. I think that the one thing I've definitely seen is just, the reduced level of effort on that part.
Yeah.
It's really just,
Yeah.
The decrease of follow-ups because of the
Exactly.
clarity that we have and because of the ability to just go back and, search through comments rather than
Yeah.
trying to find emails that might have accidentally been deleted, right? Like
Yeah,
it's really
for sure.
important, I think, to get the client's word exactly how they said it.
Exactly. And I didn't mention this before, but if there are any questions from any of the members or the guests for myself or for Vicky and Dave, feel free to leave them and we'll definitely address them. But, I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about the future and the direction of SOC 2 and where that's going. So, Dave, I would love to get your insights, especially as an industry veteran. You've seen a lot of it. You've
I've
seen
seen
a
a
lot
lot,
of
yeah.
you've seen a lot of success stories and a lot of pain throughout this process. So definitely want to hear, I think it's no secret that like everything else in our life, technology is coming in, it's taken over, it's changing things, and
Yeah.
you either keep up or you don't. So would
Yeah.
love to hear your predictions, if you will, for the future.
Yeah, I'm going to start just kind of talking a little bit more about the previous topic. It's just about the present state, right? And then
Yeah.
also kind of a little bit about the future. So to kind of give some perspective on both sides of the fence, right? So from an audit perspective, you have kind of the automation of an audit, in the sense that companies will submit evidence to a auditor, And there will be an automated process that the auditor has built to say, hey, all these tickets you gave me, 99% of them checked out, but this one failed for whatever reason, or we have a follow-up related to that. And there's these automated processes, right, that the auditor has established, which is great. And that's, I would say, more so industry practice that we're observing now in the present state, right? But now, and that's kind of one side of the fence. The other side of the fence that I think the industry is moving towards, and some, I would say more so, this is more present in larger companies, more Fortune 500 companies, that have been able to kind of embrace the tech forward nature of this, is that they also have internally a automated mechanism by which they're monitoring their own environment. This can be done commonly referred to as like health checks, or they have a process that's integrated with their identity access management tools, their change management tools that in real time, live, as things are being deployed to production or changes are being made to some type of tooling, they can see, did this change follow my defined process as designed, and is it operating as I would expect, right?
Yeah.
And so in the future, I think we're going to see a lot more of that adoption, right? To kind of recap, presently we observe a lot of auditors establishing automated test cases, but I think what we're going to see again on the other side is that at companies internally, we're going to be seeing a lot more adoption related to automating and understanding what is the health of my current environment as of today. If I click the button and I wanted to see, as of February 7th, 11:16 Central Standard Time, what is my like the operating effectiveness of my environment? What's the health like? I should be able to see that, and you could we'll see a lot more of establishment of thresholds, I'll call it, of saying, hey, I would expect maybe there's going to be some deviations in my control. Maybe it's not going to operate as expected 100% of the time. I think we understand that that's going to be the case, but what's that good threshold? What's my risk acceptance related to that? And I think it's going to be a lot more transparent throughout that process too, which will be nice.
So I was just going to say, like, in that regard, exactly, do you think that there's going to be also a change or a differing level of scrutiny, for example, that might be coming from the auditors since there is that level of technology? Or do you think, like, where there might be a little bit of in the past, there might have been some hall passes, for example, like we understand, 26 hours versus 24, whatever, now do you think that that's going to change the way that auditors actually audit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to spark the conversation, Cristina, about what is that threshold, right? It's going to provoke a good conversation to say what is enough, right? What is reasonable assurance, and is that enough for us to opine that yes, things are operating effectively? And I think most commonly, at least at Leica, I can just speak to that, right? Every audit company is a bit different in terms of the level of assurance that they're seeking, but I would say it'll provoke that conversation to say, hey, what is enough? And I think a lot of it depends upon the willingness of risk that companies are willing to accept, right? And having a thoughtful conversation about that in a two-way street, because companies are going to know a lot more about their own internal environment and the risk posture that they're seeking to protect their customer data and things of that nature, more so than maybe what an auditor would know, because the auditor is not seeing their environment 365 days a year. The owner of that data is.
Right. And I think that that's just one of the many components of this that need to constantly be juggling, right? So, in past episodes of Christina's Compliance Corner, I've been pretty vocal about saying, like, compliance is pretty non-negotiable. It needs to be from the management down. Just a general theme across operational effectiveness and success. And go ahead.
And I think what we'll see too is a lot as companies continue to adopt that process where they're going to be continuously evaluating their controls through, I'll call them just standard monitoring mechanisms. What we're going to see though is there's going to be scrutiny. This might have been kind of more pointedly what your question was getting at is, will auditors look at kind of those monitors? And auditors absolutely will. But we're going to have to get some type of assurance over that, right? If you put yourself in the auditor's shoes, right? if a company comes to you and say, hey, our environment's fine, right? We still have to do something to get some type of level of assurance. And that kind of goes back almost back to the maybe one of my original statements kind of on this webcast is that some things have not changed and they won't change, which is getting that level of assurance on the design and operating effectiveness of the control. So if companies are using these automated mechanisms to evaluate the health of their environment, and they're hanging their hat on that, which is great. And I think it's a great thing that everybody should be adopting because it's just much more cost effective. That's something that the auditor would still have to evaluate to make sure that 90% threshold is still being met or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You got it.
Which, is, I want to turn it over to Vicky there too, because I know, Vicky, you've done a lot of work also from like a product design and things like that. What's your stance on that automation and monitoring and continuous compliance that, we're definitely seeing more and more? Is it an opportunity to, like Dave mentioned, hang your hat on it and say bye-bye? Or, what's your say?
I think like what David alludes to with like the health checks and, the continuous monitoring, I don't think like the automation will definitely be there to help assist in the process. But I also think, people don't have to be as concerned as they might think, right? About, that being a perfect mechanism or not, because at the end of the day, it might not be the only source of truth, right? Like we might find something wrong with that, but they might have more evidence that they could provide elsewhere. But this, for the large part of maybe samples that we take, could cover like those core components that we're looking for. And then, they still have an opportunity to clear the ambiguity that we might be looking for assurance on. Right. So we shouldn't feel limited, I guess, to what the automated evidence gives us. But it should empower us to be able to, I guess, have like even a smaller team working on compliance or be able to do more.
Yeah. And I think that kind of like being limited or things like that. I mean, I'm pretty old school when it comes to feeling a little bit of maybe some skepticism, I'll call it. I'll play devil's advocate here. I wouldn't want to put 100% of my faith or necessarily 100% of my trust in the fact that a monitor or a vulnerability scanner or whatever it might be is going to be 100% accurate. I think like, even vulnerability management tools or monitors, whatever it might be, they definitely have the ability to lapse or have some incorrect data from time to time or things like that. So, I guess like what's both of yours, it's a question for both of you. Like, what is your opinion, I guess, on like the future of pretty much like a vendor, a tool, something like that, taking over almost like all of these processes from HR all the way down to like your change management? It's going to be, there's going to be a tool for everything. There already is. So, how do you think that's going to affect the future of this?
I think we'll see more and more tools, Cristina, come out and more, right? It's like companies are constantly evolving, right? Think about like, if I just think about Leica, right? It's like back in the big four, and that it used to be, larger than that. There was a lot more, I'll call them like the big four space. I can't even remember how many there were, like 8
like
or
10.
the big 8 or something like that,
or something,
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, in those companies, right, you don't have, I mean, it's very slow, right? And then you're very slow in terms of the evolution, in terms of being more tech forward of adopting some of these processes. And then you find companies like Leica that's kind of just very speedy and like, let's adopt this stuff. We see the value in doing this. And so we're going to kind of see that here, but I think we're going to see a lot of tools being deployed that are going to provide that end-to-end continuous automation. I mean, we've seen it already. At Leica, we're building a lot of monitors already internally for our customers as an example. The end-to-end complete life cycle of it would be awesome from HR. You have kind of like
all
siloed processes. Like HR is typically siloed in terms of kind of who owns that org or piece of your
Yeah.
org versus, your engineering team is going to be a little bit different, right?
Right.
Your CTO is typically not going to be governing your HR processes. So, but regardless,
We hope
that
not.
doesn't mean, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have some type of tooling in the future that's going to be able to provide that end-to-end picture and opinion on what's going on within your environment. I think companies that have been engaging in SOC 2 will have that will kind of go to market with that maybe new opportunity of these new tools sooner than other companies, because they're going to understand the end-to-end processes a little bit more intimately versus companies that are trying to go through it for the first time. There's a lot of different dependencies that I'm sure will have to get ironed out before getting into that.
For sure. I think that's great. And as always, as we kind of wrap up this episode, would love to hear from the group if there are any questions for Dave, for Vicky, for myself. I know we got a lot of some solid attendance today. So if there are any additional questions, we're happy to answer them. And then just a small plug for on February 16th, we will also be doing a TechCrunch webinar that will be talking about similar topic, maximizing efficiency and transparency in the audit process as well. So, when we recap this on the blog, we'll be able to put a link in there so that you'll be able to attend that as well. But yes, ask away. We've got a few more minutes. Any closing thoughts, Vicky and Dave? It's okay if you don't. I kind of already drilled you guys.
No, this is a good conversation. I think ultimately we're going to see a lot more automation. I'm excited for it. I know Vicky is as well.
100%.
And I think it's ultimately, Cristina and folks that are listening in here today, it's going to reduce, I think, the internal cost of compliance at companies and your external cost of compliance. And in layman's terms, what that really means is internally, you're going to spend a lot less time. So time is money, right? Collecting documents and speaking with your auditors, right? Likewise, that naturally, if you have those established processes in place, it's going to reduce your external cost of compliance, right? It's going to be a hard case for your auditor to come to you and say, the fee associated with this engagement is going to be $100,000 or something, right? Right? Those fees are going to come down drastically because they understand that you as an organization have these processes already established and in place, which makes the audit go much and significantly faster, right? So that case of that external fee is going to be decreasing. So I think the adoption of automation is a critical thing going on here.
Yeah, I really think like the integrations going forward. Obviously, our clients use all kinds of tools, and being able to integrate that information will definitely, drive efficiency in their own internal compliance activities. Being able to do access reviews from a centralized place, where all of the system content is in one place, or all of the collaborators are logged into one place to do this access review, to do these different activities. Like, that's going to save people like time internally, and then having that data structured and, having a dedicated application for performing audits. Having that data structured will make a huge difference in terms of just the manpower that it takes to get an audit done. And then therefore, an audit report can arrive to your table a lot faster. And
a lot less painfully.
Right. A lot more clear. But yeah, I definitely see the future of this being much more automated.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more. And I think, we've done our time, we've paid our dues to the old way. I'm definitely excited for the future of this space, especially as, it gains more and more traction. It becomes more and more of a absolute deal breaker if you don't have it, rather than a nice to have. I think everybody could benefit from kind of understanding the landscape of where we are right now and where we need to go, especially as, we move forward. yeah, 2 thumbs up for the future.
Second that.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much, Vicky and Dave. We really appreciate you being on here, sharing your wisdom. You guys are crushing it, and keep up the good work. And, maybe we'll have to do a look back series in a year from now where we can talk about, our predictions here and how many of them came true.
I like it. Thanks, Christina.
Awesome.
Right.
All right,
Thanks.
guys. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.
Bye now.